Well, good morning, everyone, and a hearty welcome from us here at TPAbenchmark.com to all our advisors that are joining us today. And as you're signing on, I just want to thank you for joining us in this new virtual world in which we find ourselves living. I think we largely have a group of advisors today from the Northeast, and it's always wonderful to see other people and have good interaction. So we are going to deliver a great session for you all today, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. By way of background, for some of you, you may have joined us at one of our in-person luncheons, perhaps at the Huntley Tavern or out in Summit, New Jersey, but many of you may be new to us here at TPAbenchmark.com. So what we are is we are a network of over 50 leading third-party administrators and record keepers around the country. You're going to meet some of our folks today. And our real mission here at TPAbenchmark.com, we call it Partnerships in Action. And what we do is we partner up advisors such as yourself focused on the retirement market with record keepers and TPAs, as well as leading retirement plan providers. And the goal of all that partnering is to get everybody to write more retirement business. And that's what today's session is all about. We've heard a lot on the CARES Act in recent weeks, and we want to start to shift the dial so that we can start to get back to what will be the new normal. And we want to help you, advisors, start to fill your prospect pipeline. And that's what today's session is all about. And you're going to hear lots of great tips. I received emails from you today asking if we will record this session. It is being recorded. So we encourage you to engage with us. If you're inclined, I just want to point out one technical item before we do introductions and start with our first segment. But there is a question tab. If you just take a minute to look at the grab tab. You can type in questions, and if you'd like to do that, I'll acknowledge you just by your first name so you won't be embarrassed, and I will forward your question to the presenters. So feel free to do that. We'd love to have your participation. So let me start with some introductions. I'll start with those on the screen. First of all, I'm delighted to have with us one of your own, Steve Puckett, who's Vice President of Gateway Advisory. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
Good morning. Steve is a retirement plan specialty advisor. He's been in the business for as long, if not longer than I have, over 25 years. I know Steve back to our MetLife days when he was running the broker-dealer system for MetLife. And Steve has been very, very successful in the retirement plan segment. He does specialize upmarket 10 million and plus, but he has quite a number of plans under 10 million. Steve has been very proactive in this environment, and he's very transparent, and he is going to share with you best practices to help you be successful in these trying times. So Steve, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And another gentleman who is smiling on the screen who's going to help facilitate the session with Steve. I think all of you know Liam Grubb, who's a regional sales director for Franklin Templeton. Good morning, Liam.
Good morning, Dawn. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. For those that have attended our in-person events, Liam is just a great facilitator and an overall great guy, and we're thrilled to have him be a part of the session today. Carlos Terriche is the regional sales director for the Northeast for Kravitz. And he is well known, good morning, well known in the retirement marketplace. And Carlos is going to lead our third session. We are seeing a lot of opportunity in cash balance plans. And Carlos is going to give you the insider views of what he's seeing in terms of sales closing in cash balance plan. He's going to tell you the type of plans to look for, the demographic characteristics, and he's really going to help you hone your prospecting efforts so you can win some business this year. So Carlos, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Jake Linney is a great partner of ours. He represents the American Retirement Association. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again, Dawn.
And Jake has arranged for all the participants on today's call to receive a NAPA CE credit, 1.5 CE credits for today's session. And Jake is going to point you to some helpful resources real quickly before we get started. But thank you, Jake, for joining us. Let me acknowledge a few other folks who are going to be on our panel. Randall Iavino for Voya. Randall, everyone in New Jersey, I think, knows you. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Dawn. Thanks for having me.
And Randall will be back on the screen for our second segment. Sue Missick, who is Vice President of NPPG Fiduciary Services, also well known in the advisor community. Thank you, Sue, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Donna Kramer, who's a good friend of all you advisors out there from BPAS. She's the Regional Sales Director for the Northeast for BPAS. Donna, thank you for your participation. Tom Lunkar, Regional Sales Director for Invesco, who is joining us, a great firm, and he's got some fantastic insights and tools he's going to give you all. So thanks, Tom.
You're welcome. Good morning, folks. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, one of our very own, Guy Hocker, who runs the administrative support network for all of Cetera Financial. Guy Hocker from California. Thank you for joining us. Terrific.
Good day, everybody. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Guy. We'll be hearing more from those folks in a moment. We're going to lead off with best practices, but real quickly, Jake, from the American Retirement Association, you've got some great resources for those that are interested. We'll send it out as a follow-up, but could you just point that out to folks and just tell folks what NAPA is?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dawn. So the American Retirement Association, we have 5 sister organizations. The one that represents plan advisors is NAPA. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with NAPA or not. It is the National Association of Plan Advisors. We're probably most well known for our NAPA Summit event every year, which is like a 401k convention. And then also our CPFA, the fiduciary designation. We are a nonprofit member-based organization right outside of Washington, D.C. We have over 15,000 members, 95% of which are plan advisors like you. And I just wanted to share a couple things with you. So we have 2 goals as an association. The first part of which is to educate retirement plan advisors. So we have several education programs that we'll be sending out after the call. And then secondly is we advocate on your behalf to enhance and protect the employer-sponsored retirement plan system. So we are here working for you. The way that our membership works is 2 ways. We have an individual membership and we also have a firm partner membership. So many of your broker dealers are already firm partners and many of you are members of the organization. If you do have any questions, please ask your retirement plan people within your broker dealer. What we put together for these times is we have a special page dedicated to retirement plan issues with the coronavirus. So if you do have any questions, this should be your first stop and your first resource. And if you have additional questions from that, I'll be sending out or Don will be sending out my contact information, and you can reach out to me with your specific questions. But this coronavirus page is tons of valuable resources for you. It is updated daily. The last update happened yesterday. We have FAQs on the coronavirus. We have 7 letters that we and other groups that we are associated with have written to the IRS and the DOL. There are legislative updates for both CARES and subsequent legislation. There's all of the regulatory guidance that's available that has come out recently. And then we have a series of practice pointers and plan sponsor resources too. We have nearly 20 practice pointer articles from various parts of the industry, and we have over 40 resources for plan sponsors that are available there for related to coronavirus changes they can make to their plans. So again, if you do have any questions or you are struggling with anything with your clients, we are here as your resource to advocate on your behalf. So again, Dawn, thank you so much for having us, and we certainly appreciate all your support. And again, we are here to help and support you all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jake. We'll be sending out a link to that free resource for you all following the call today. And we will automatically be setting you up for 1.5 CE credits for today's section. Thank you, American Retirement Association. Okay, without any further ado, Mr. Grubb, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and look forward to hearing from you and Steve today.
Thanks again, Dawn. Really excited to be part of this virtual event, and a real privilege for me to serve as moderator for our first segment, which, again, is a Q&A with one of the more successful and elite advisors / consultants in the country, Steve Puckett. So, Steve, first question for you. We know you don't have a crystal ball on your desk, but how do you see the coronavirus reshape the retirement market over the next 12 to 18 months?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Liam. And thank you, Dawn, for having me. And again, I appreciate the time and energy. And certainly from this standpoint, again, I think the most important thing today is to be creative. And again, there's no crystal ball. What we do know is, first and foremost, one-on-one meetings are probably off the table for the next 2 to 3 months. So more and more, it's going to be technology driven. How you interact with your clients, how you interact with your prospects, how you interact with your participants is going to be technology driven. So with that being said, I put together about 4 or 5 bullet points on what I think are the hot topics that you need to think about or consider when it comes to, going down this path. And the first and foremost, again, thanks, we have 50, 60 people, advisors on the call. I think the first important thing to do is figure out what your compliance department allows you to do. So first and foremost, before you go down this path, figure out what is that boundary when it comes to technology. It might be a wide swath. It might be small. You may only have one particular way of communicating, one particular technology, but first and foremost is find out what from a compliance standpoint you can and can't do, because I think that's going to basically open the door to the next step. Then I think the next step is that technology, whether it's Zoom, whether it is WebEx, whether it's GoToMeeting, whether it's anything else, figure out what you can do. And then you need to figure out how to use it. Everyone thinks that, oh, it's so easy to do a GoToMeeting or a GoToWebinar or a Zoom meeting. It's not. You need to practice. As a consultant, you have to understand that the online attention span is much different than the in-person. In-person, you can have as long as you want. They're not going to get up in the middle of a meeting and walk away. They will in a webinar. So you have to be to the point. You have to have practice. You have to have it pointed in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. And again, Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, you have to learn, you have to prepare in advance. Even the most basic things of just pausing and not talking over a client, talking over a colleague. Again, you may have your investment person, you may have your administrative person, understanding that you have to practice on how you're going to present. It's not that easy. And, there are some resources, there are some service providers that have come up with some, training modules on how to use WebEx, how to use GoToMeeting, because it's not that easy. Again, you need to learn. Second little piece that I put here is how do you add value if you're not in person? Because I think everyone says, hey, if I can go over to, ABC company, for the meeting, that's how I add value. Well, if you can't go to their office, how are you adding value? So now you need to think about, what are those various touch points and or ways where you can add value. And again, one thing that we've done is webinars for our participants. So we know we have 80 clients, we have $1 billion worth of assets that we consult on. We know that we have about 15,000 participants that are going through the coronavirus scare and the market volatility. So we offered every single one of our clients, whether it was a 5-person law firm or whether it was a 7,000-person manufacturing firm, that we would do customized market volatility coronavirus updates for their participants. And we would customize it for their company. Again, we would take a basic education webinar. We would customize it for their plan. We would customize it for their investment options. We would customize it for their investments. And then we would do it to all their employees. we've done 10 of them, and we've talked to over 1,000 participants. And we don't do any individual business. So this is just a value add where we can add that to what is our list of services that we're offering. And again, when it comes to the webinar, at no cost, very easy to set up. Again, we use GoToWebinar as well. Again, it can be tricky to use at first, but once you figure out what you're doing, it's very easy to do that. Again, what other value adds can you add? We also threw in, financial planning, one-on-one consultations. So if we've offered all of our clients, employees, if they want to talk to us in just 15 minutes of get it off their chest, we've offered that up, and we've talked to over 40 participants. And we don't do any individual business. This is just basically talking to them and answering their questions. So that's certainly, what we need to do. But I think the most important from the new normal is you may not be able to meet with anyone for 2 to 3 months, and you need to figure out how you're going to service and how you're going to add value without being in person.
That's a great answer, Steve. I know we all really appreciate the insight and some of those awesome ideas. So the second question is twofold. First, we're hoping you can share with us, how you built your retirement plan practice. Then as a follow-up, in this new normal, what do you think will be required of advisors, now that's different from 3 months ago? In other words, will the same strategies in your view work moving forward for an advisor looking to build a practice today, or do you think the playbook has completely changed?
Thanks, Liam. And I'll take this, with two answers, because I think the basic sales and marketing will always be there. I've always been a blocking and tackling type of guy. Again, the more at-bats you get, the more likely you're going to get a hit. So the more cold calls you make, the more emails you send out, the more likely you're going to get a response. That hasn't changed at all. I've always been a big believer in the past of multiple media, multiple touches. So we'll send out letters, we'll send out emails, we'll make cold calls. I know I'm one of the very few people that still cold call. I think right now is actually the best time to cold call. And people say, well, how can you cold call? No one's in the office. Well, that's exactly right. Anybody who's scared of actually someone picking up the phone, no one's picking up the phone now. It's going straight to their voicemail. So now you can cold call them again with a great, hey, just want to introduce you to a fantastic webinar topic, something, and it's going to go straight to voicemail. And it's, it's very easy. It's very simple. It's not the, we don't like you, stop calling me. Now it's a very easy cold call. Again, email has always been our bread and butter. We maintain a 2,500 list email database that we always update. Every single month, we're trying to add more people. As that changes, as people retire, as people leave companies, we always maintain that. So that, I think, is still going to be there. The basic blocking and tackling is still going to be there. But I do think that now, with the coronavirus, with the quarantine, now it's time to be creative, and now it's time to be focused. So when I say first and foremost, stay focused, I probably get 10 to 20 invitations to webinars each week now. Every service provider, every mutual fund, every insurance provider is doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 webinars a week. They are on that mentality that they must do webinars. They must get people to them. So if I wanted to, I could spend 40 to 70 hours a week on someone else's webinar. The problem is, how much business does that generate for me? None. Again, training, learning how to use GoToMeeting, that will generate business. And again, building your practice, that will generate business. But if I'm listening to someone's, mid-cap value fund, and that takes an hour of my time, how much value add does that bring to me? Not as much. So again, most importantly, to build business, especially nowadays where you're in your office, you got the kids, you got the dog, you got, the gardener outside, mowing the lawn, you have to stay focused. Again, what I think is most important is take a half hour, block your time, whether it's Monday morning, Tuesday morning, half hour will be my social media time. That's where I'll put in an article on LinkedIn. That's where I'll work on my YouTube channel. That's where I'll, tweet out something. I'll take a half hour and just block that. I'll take maybe a half hour on Tuesday or Wednesday. And I typically, when I cold call, in the old days from 8 to 8:30 in the morning and 5 to 5:30 at night, because that's before the secretaries and the screeners get in. Now that's not that important. Now you can cold call any time of the day you want, but I think now is the important thing to do is to cold call. But I also think it's to have a reason and have a different, agenda. We've already done 4 CARES Act webinars ourselves, and my largest client had called me and said, Steve, I've sat through 3 CARES presentations, and yours was the most concise and most to the point. Thank you very much. And that was my largest client. So again, people are saying, oh, I don't want to do webinars. Everyone's doing webinars. I get it. But the reason why everyone's doing webinars is because they're getting people at those webinars. So it's still important, that's still blocking and tackling. Social media, very important. LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Alignable, anything that you can do from a social media, I think is fantastic. Again, the most important with that is be consistent. You can't do it once and think someone's going to go to you. Sue Missick is a fantastic LinkedIn. She is constantly putting an article on, not so much something that she wrote, but maybe something she found, something she looked at, something that she noticed. And then she'll add color commentary to it. Oh, by the way, this was a great piece on the NAPA website, and that generates followings. The other thing that I think is great to do now is TPAs are in the same boat as advisors. There are going to be TPAs that are out of business. There's going to be advisors that are going to be out of business. Everyone's looking to partner. So again, I've come up with 3 or 4 third-party administrators that I think have some fantastic resources where we do monthly plan sponsor webinars, and we get typically 20 clients and about 15 to 20 prospects. And now I'm having third-party administrators join me on those to talk about various, whether it's cash balance, whether it's HSAs, whether it's cybersecurity. Partner with TPAs. Now is a great time to partner. And in that vein, partner with people that aren't in your lane. So if you're driving down the road here and you're talking 316, 321, 338, or broker dealer, don't partner with a TPA that's doing 338 services or 321. Partner with someone who's not driving in your lane, not someone who's you're competing. That's so important. Find someone who you can partner with. That's great. And then lastly, be creative. When we did our first CARES Act, we were one of the first ones to do it. Our local Chamber of Commerce and our downtown business district was dealing with, how to keep businesses around. We provided our CARES Act, and they ended up sending it to all their members. So again, it's just be creative. Nothing's perfect, nothing's going to work, but you got to have those at bats, and so you got to keep making the phone calls. You got to keep working the centers of influence, the accountants, the auditors, the attorneys. And again, it's how many at bats you can get.
Thanks for that, Steve. And as a former college football player, the analogy of blocking and tackling really resonates with me. So I appreciate you working that in there. Lastly, continuing on the theme of prospecting in this current environment, Steve. We're hoping you can share this, where are you seeing the most opportunities? For example, are they takeovers versus startups? And, what do you think are the keys to winning those opportunities in this new normal? Well,
First and foremost, again, I think the number one opportunity for anyone on this call, anyone who's in the financial services industry, and I hate to say this, is insurance. We have over 70,000 people in the United States have died, ranging from the ages, in New York City, 21 years, 30 years old. If you're not talking about insurance to your prospects, clients, everyone who has children under the age of 25 should have term insurance. Right now, you should be talking about term insurance. You should be talking about, guaranteed products. You should be talking about, whole life. Again, I don't do that business, but don't ignore that. I mean, God only knows whether it was 1991, whether it was 2001, whether it's 2007. Whenever we have market volatility, annuities, insurance, immediate annuities, index annuities, term life, that's a huge opportunity. So again, I know we're talking 401k world, but don't ignore, you have opportunities there. Don't ignore that. That is number one priority at all. Then I think, the next step is, who are those providers? Who are those brokers that are not providing services? Again, whether it's ADP, whether it's Paychecks, whether it's Fidelity, where they might not be offering services to the individual participant or to the plan sponsor. I think those are fantastic opportunities. I think right now, and again, Carlos will talk about cash balance plans. What we've seen is there are winners and losers in this, unfortunately. There are going to be winners, and there are going to be people that want to set up cash balance plans. Don't forget about that. And I think, there's great opportunity. But again, I think from an advisor standpoint, you may have to pivot, but there's opportunities there. And whether it's small plans, whether it's takeovers, again, I think just target your audience, find out where there's opportunities, and that's what I think. Again, I've always been, being very strategic. I don't use the shotgun approach. I don't just try to shoot for everyone. I don't shoot at 100 prospects and hope that I can hit one. I do my research, figure out exactly what I'm successful at, what my target market is, and then I go directly at those people. So I know all of the plans in New Jersey that are between 10 million and 100 million that are direct without a consultant. And that's where I target my space. So again, find out what works for you. Again, whether it's an industry, whether you're great at law firms, whether you're great at, association plans, whether it's, technology, find out what works for you and then stick to it and build your script, build your story around that industry that works for you. Again, I think it's not rocket science. Obviously, no one here is splitting the atom. It's all about just figuring out what you do. Again, having your 90-second story of what makes you different. Obviously, there's a lot of us in the world. So again, you have to have 90 seconds on why you're better, different than all of the rest of us. So again, focus on it, practice it, and again, figure out what, how many at-bats you can get. Because right now, again, no one's going to be looking to hire or fire anyone right now. But right now is where you can get your name out so that when everything changes and turns, they'll remember, hey, I got 3 phone calls from Steve Puckett. He invited me to 3 webinars, and PS, my current consultants broker didn't offer any of that. So again, it's going to be challenging for new business. It's going to be challenging for everyone, but now's the time to get the at-bats in.
That's awesome, Steve. Well, Dawn, that about wraps it up for us. Thank you again so much for having us, Dawn.
Thank you very much.
So much. You've been a great guest on all of our webinars. We look forward to having you again. And let me just throw one other thing in here. Actually, we've got some folks from, I'm looking at our attendees, we've got some folks from Paylocity on the phone as well. Rob Ruggiero and his team out of Jersey, many of you know. Rob, if you're there, maybe you could just say hello. I don't know if Rob can hear us, but Steve, what do you think about leveraging centers of influence like Paylocity, CPAs, attorneys, just real quickly, because we've got 2 minutes left in your time slot.
Oh, I highly recommend it. Paylocity's been a fantastic resource, fantastic partner for us. Again, our average client is between 100 employees and several thousand employees, but many of them ask us about payroll. Again, if they're looking at changing payroll, maybe they're currently with ADP or Paychex, they'll call us and say, what do you know about Paylocity? What do you know about Paycom, or what do you know? Same thing with ERISA attorneys. We keep a listing of ERISA attorneys that, again, we offer up to our clients. If our clients have any questions, hey, I can't give you one, but here are 3 names of ERISA attorneys that we work with. Again, we'd be more than happy to schedule a call, a conference call. Same thing with auditors. We love working with auditors. Again, auditing plans over 100 employees need to be audited, and we break down our audit resources kind of 3 or 4 different ways. We have that national practice that is low cost. If you just want an online audit, fantastic, we have a solution for you. You want a high-touch New Jersey auditor? Fantastic, we have a high-touch New Jersey auditor. You want a high-touch New York auditor? Fantastic, we have someone that we can offer there. Or you want the creme de la creme, top 5 auditors in the country? We have them, and we'll tell our clients, hey, we'll send you the list of 3 or 4. We can't offer one, but again, we love doing that. Again, every month we are doing a plan sponsor call, and again, it ranges in topics from college savings and what you're doing about college student debt, HSAs, and we'll have our centers of influence, present there and offer their service as well. It's a great partnership. We highly recommend partnering with CPAs, auditors, ERISA attorneys, payroll providers. Absolutely.
Great. That's terrific. I mean, it's a great opportunity for any business, right? And now to develop your referral sources. You even mentioned financial planning, to partner up with someone who is doing financial planning and get a cross referral network going. Rob Ruggiero, just a quick hello if you do have audio.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, Rob. Thanks for joining
All
us.
right. You had me muted there, Dawn.
Yes.
Anyhow, hi everyone. How's everybody doing? This is great. Steve, I love your presentation because that's basically what we live by. 60% of our workforce is remote. And one of the things that hit home with me, what you just said, is attention span. When we're doing this stuff remotely, people are walking around, they got their children in the background, they're doing everything else but sometimes listening to what you have to say, and getting to the point, I have to say, is probably the most the number one takeaway from everything that you said. Get to the point, right? And thank you, Dawn, for having us, Paylocity, on the call today. Really do appreciate that. Appreciate the business that all the advisors that we work with refer to Paylocity. Can't thank you guys enough. This is a crisis that we're in right now, and we're all in this together. And some of the things that Steve brought up, just being in front of people. How do we prospect in this remote world that we live in today? And Paylocity just purchased a company called VidGrid, which does remote video conferencing, and we're offering that now to all our advisors at no charge for 90 days. And we've been doing a great job with gaining access to advisors by doing quick, 60-second messages, video messages, where the prospect, advisor, partner that we're working with could see a face behind the name. And it really has worked tremendously well in our environment. We've actually increased our appointment rate by doing it like that. And it's been very, the response has been tremendous. And if anybody is interested in the VidGrid, reach out to me or the Paylocity rep that you work with, and I'd be happy to help you out.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for that impromptu being available. We will send that out to folks. That's great. I think I'll take advantage of that myself, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks, Rob, for joining us. We'll get your contact information out to the advisors on the phone. Well, thank you, Steve. Thanks, Liam, for joining us. I know you're going to sit tight while we bring on our other presenters. You will be in the background, so if folks have questions, they will be with us for the duration of the time. I'd like to bring up our panel now, and we have a mix of providers and TPAs here who are looking forward to partnering with you. Steve made a great comment about leveraging the resources of TPAs and record keepers, and we have a number of those folks on the line. Let me just reintroduce our panel. Guy Hocker is actually a TPA / provider for the Cetera network. Guy, thanks for joining us. You work with how many advisors through Cetera?
About 8,000 financial advisors in the Cetera Financial Group network.
So Guy has tremendous insights as to what's working for advisors today. We're going to tap his knowledge base. Donna Kramer, BPAS, a record keeper. Donna, thanks for joining us. You're working with about how many advisors here in the Northeast?
Oh, in the Northeast, I mean, overall nationwide, about 4,000 maybe or so, but so it varies, but certainly a couple of hundreds, because now I'm covering all of New York State, whereas before just downstate. So a good couple of hundred.
Great. So Donna also has some tremendous perspectives we're going to tap in. Randall Iovino, I think you're a fixture in the state of New Jersey for Voya. We're looking forward to your insights today.
Thanks, Dawn.
Tom Lunkar, who many of you know from Invesco, he's got some great insights and tools that we're going to bring to bear. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. Looking forward to speaking with everybody. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Sue Missick, who runs the NPPG Fiduciary Services Network, is going to share some great insights this morning. And as Steve mentioned, she is a social media expert. I am trying to get started myself in social media too. If you need help getting a YouTube channel, if you need help doing LinkedIn, let me tell you, call Sue Missick.
Thank you, Dawn.
Great. So we're going to continue the conversation we just had with Steve, and we're really going to talk about giving advisors some hooks to gain entry with new clients, right? So we're going to start out by following up on the same question, being what are some of the key themes that you see shaping the prospecting environment over the next 12 to 18 months? And the whole name of the game is getting advisors back into action in terms of acquiring new business. So let's talk about, as a starting point, there's been a lot of new legislation out there with the CARES Act. But from a prospecting perspective, I'm going to call on Donna Kramer and Guy Hocker. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing with your advisor networks about taking some nuggets from the CARE Act or using just plan design, consultation, and compliance as a new business acquisition tool. So maybe, Donna, I'm going to toss it to you first, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks, Dawn. Appreciate the opportunity. So I would say the biggest thing that we're hearing from all of the advisors that we work with relative to plan design is what can we talk to our plan sponsors about doing relative to employer contributions for 2020. Obviously, so many firms are dealing now with, a financial crunch. And so they're looking at their plans and saying, well, geez, what can we do about these contributions? And clearly, it's going to be different whether a plan just has discretionary contributions or safe harbor contributions. So the methodology will be different. And then there's the conversation about what do I do later on? How do I reinstate contributions, right? So the thing that we are saying, and that I think that flows from Steve's conversation, is that even when you're prospecting, these are things to talk to new prospects about, right? And again, as Steve said, where am I getting prospects now? Obviously, first and foremost, you do want to make sure that you're talking to your existing clients, right? Because if you're not, somebody else is going to talk to them, right? So you want to make sure that you're talking to them, but you want to try and prospect because clearly there are probably advisors out there who aren't doing a great job, as Steve said, keeping in touch. So there is room for some, we'll call it low-hanging fruit, to try and reach those people. So if you're looking for a hook, right, like Steve says, maybe a niche, what is it that I can call them about that maybe somebody else hasn't called them about? And to me, that plan design is a feature. So what are you doing about current contributions? Have you thought about a strategy for dealing with them? And then while you're at it, you might talk about other things. If somebody's going to look at their plan provisions, have they put in a Roth? I still get a ton of questions about cash outs. Like, we never put in a cash out option. So we've got all these small balance people in the plan, right? So all things like that, plan provisions, are things that we think you should be talking to not only existing, but prospecting people about.
Fantastic. Guy, why don't you pick it up from there and just share some of the things that you're seeing as like a prospecting hook to get conversations going with plan sponsors using plan design as a tool.
Sure, and I'm with Donna. The cessation of safe harbor and the how do we start up again, that is a big part of the conversation. I think the other nugget of help that advisors can bring to prospects is just trying to provide some clarity around CARES Act distributions. If you've got plans with more than one record keeper, your head is probably spinning with all the different ways that the record keepers are approaching CARES distributions and loans, and helping the sponsor to understand the communications that are being given to the participants and what are the obligations for notices to those participants it's again, they're not getting help. And it's that I love Steve's blocking and tackling idea. That notion is so true, but the question is, what are you giving to the prospect that's your bit of sugar? And it is really a drink of cool water for them to have someone speak some clarity around how to unravel how their record keeper is helping them with the CARES Act distribution.
Great point. And I think, you both raised very good points. I mean, some advisors are assuming perhaps this is not the time to do new business, but what I'm hearing from you all is that really there's an opportunity space, because this is when sponsors need more help than ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Randy, let me turn to you. Steve Puckett talked about technology and leveraging technology in lieu of in-person meetings, but I know at Voya, you guys are looking at technology as a differentiator, and you're looking forward as to how the participant communication landscape is shifting. Share with us a little bit what your thoughts are in terms of the paradigm shift that you guys at Voya envision taking place over the next year and a year and a half as a result of the quarantine that we're in and coronavirus and all of that.
Sure, Dawn, happy to. I think gradually there was an evolution in our business to utilizing technology more and more, in the retirement plan industry and really across all businesses. What this event has essentially triggered is an acceleration of that. And so out of necessity, the way that we're connecting with our customers and with our advisor relationships is exclusively through technology right now. Our expectation is that because of the environment that we're all going through, that there will be some learning that comes out of this from a plan sponsor perspective, that will shift the delivery model moving forward. So everything from how we engage with plan sponsors that Steve spoke to, whether it's ongoing reviews or finals presentations, I think will increasingly be conducted virtually, and how we're connecting and engaging with plan participants as well. 100% of our activity with plan participants today is utilizing virtual technology and other digital mediums. And I think what we're finding is, and some of this could be a product of just a lot of folks being at home and not in the office, but we're really being pleasantly surprised by the attendance at a lot of these sessions that we're hosting for plan sponsors and for their employees across all different types of demographic populations and industries, where our perception before, and maybe the hesitation to host a virtual session with a specific group, the thought process may have been, well, there's not going to be that many people that dial in or engage with that type of learning. Let's just do it the way we've always done it, where you come out to our site and you set up in the lunchroom. I think what we're finding is actually contrary to that. There's a lot of engagement, a lot of people signing on to those sessions, and I think that's going to shift the way the plan sponsor views education moving forward, where they'll be more open to virtual education. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think there's some efficiencies that we gain in doing it that way. And I think the advisors on the call can leverage technology, as Steve was saying, really realize some efficiencies in their business. The other point that I'll just make is I think that plan sponsors are going to increasingly start to view the providers that they partner with, whether that's the record keeper, the TPA, or the advisor, and they're going to start to look to folks that have infrastructure, that have technology capabilities, that are on kind of the forefront of technology. We're increasingly getting questions around cybersecurity, certainly during this time that we're in. But I think plan sponsors are going to start to look through a different lens on their service providers, and that's that has application not only to record keepers like Voya, but also to TPAs and to advisors. So to the extent that you can, as an advisor, embrace technology and articulate how you're able to support leveraging technology to service them as a plan sponsor and to communicate with their participants, I think it's going to give you a leg up, give you an advantage.
Great, Randall. And just, listening to your comments, just from a sheer block and tackle point of view, so you look at the provider landscape out there, right? And let's say, there's several firms like yourself that are positioned to excel in this new world environment. I would assume that the converse is true, that there's going to be providers that perhaps don't have the technology capabilities to be able to conform to the new world of technology delivery to participants. So if I were an advisor, I'd be thinking about, 5,500 prospecting databases and kind of looking at perhaps maybe some of the providers that aren't so well positioned in this new world environment, and making some cold calls to them and kind of asking, is your provider positioned to, deliver technology in this new world order? So that would be my takeaway from a prospecting point to what you're saying. But it's going to be interesting to see how the marketplace shakes out based on what you're saying.
Yeah, and I just add to that I think that translates across business, right? And I've had this conversation with Rob Ruggiero over at Paylocity, and he mentioned earlier how well positioned they are to operate in this virtual environment. And so I think in any line of business, any type of service provider, the firms that are well equipped and that have been doing that and have the infrastructure to operate in the new world are providers and firms that the clients are going to gravitate to.
Great. Let's turn to some tried and true kind of things that have been true in the past, and let's talk about their relevance today. So I'm going to turn to Tom and Sue to kind of chime in here, but fees, prospecting and selling based on fees. Tom, is that still relevant in what you're seeing with your advisors that you're partnering with today? Is that still a point of entry? Is it still relevant for advisors and plan sponsors?
Hey, good morning, folks. The answer is yes. The big thing, remember a number of years ago, the Fee Disclosure Act that was launched called 408B2. Well, guess what? Plan sponsors are required to review their 408B2 statement every year and understand where the fees are coming from, what the fees are, and are they justified for their program. And when you look at fees are across the board. It's you, the advisor, it's the record keeper, it's the TPA, it's everybody who has a hand in the pot. There's a fee structure around that. What I find is going back to the basics. Still, this is a point of either a sore spot or a way to look at a client to say maybe you're operating inefficiently around your structure around fees. And so what I mean by that is, I asked the question, and a lot of advisors will come to us here at Invesco because we have a lot of benchmarking tools, which I'll share a little later on how to evaluate your program and how to look at your program, both from a overall fee structure as well as an advisor compensation structure. It is really asking the client, have you reviewed it? Do you understand the components of your program that's in there? And give you a couple of examples. Fees are either direct cost, where the client is signing a check and they're signing it off to the different components of the program. It's also an indirect cost. And I think the indirect cost, whether it's an asset charge, a wrap charge, or it's a revenue or what's called revenue sharing, that's a lot of times now we're all in this institutional share class and R6 share class, but there are still investment options that have revenue in it, and revenue tends to be maybe rebated back to the plan. Maybe it goes into a ERISA bucket account or it rebates back to the plan participants. So my question for you, or my question for the client is, do they understand the mechanics of it? So here's an example I recently came across that we had an advisor we were speaking with last week, and the plan was it was a decent sized plan in just shy of 10 million as an example, and they had an ERISA bucket where they had revenue taking out of the different components going into the bucket to offset and pay the different providers that are managing that program. The question became, when there was revenue sharing, indirect costs going back into the bucket, how are they applying that excessive revenue from those investment options? Were they giving it back to all the participants, or were they giving it back to only those participants that were involved in that excess revenue, meaning that they invested in those investment options that had excess revenue? And that's a question. That's a question when you start to think about what is right, what is fair, what makes sense from a fiduciary standard, and Sue can kind of engage in this a little bit. But the advisor didn't have the plan sponsor did not have an idea of how this was going back. And you see two different methodologies with this. Sometimes providers are just doing a rebate back to everybody, meaning that everybody is going to share in this excess earnings when they never generated that excess earnings. And I think that may be an issue for a lot of clients out there, especially if they're generating these excess earnings from an investment option, that they should get the full credit back. So when you're looking at fees, it's back to the basics. What makes the plan sponsor move? Look at the investment options. I mean, look at the overall fees of the overall entire program. You also got to look at, how many plans, where we are today versus where we were, say, 10 years ago. There's roughly, here in New Jersey, there's roughly 30,000 single employer plans domiciled in the state of New Jersey. New York City, you have the same equivalent. Connecticut, you got a little less. You got a whole pile of plans out here now. Is everybody paying the same cost as current market plans? Probably not. And you're seeing that, and that's still an issue to go out there and kind of focus on it to see, okay, what are you receiving? What's the value you're receiving from a cost perspective? And is it just and is it efficient? Meaning that it's meeting the needs of yourself as a plan sponsor, as a fiduciary, and also meeting the needs of your plan participants. I think that's a big thing as well.
And on that point, Tom, I'm gonna tie Sue in. You mentioned the role of the fiduciary, right, relative to fees. Sue at MPPG, you deal with this every day. Talk a little bit about the fiduciary focus as a sales point in this current environment and its relevance.
So the plan administrator, who may or may not be the plan sponsor, is the 316 fiduciary on the plan. And they have a responsibility to the participants to review the plan in hundreds of different ways. And one of the biggest items that Tom was just talking about is the benchmarking of fees and expenses and the value that you're getting for those fees and expenses. For example, you're paying your financial advisor 25, 50, 75 bips to provide services, but when was the last time you saw that financial advisor? Why are you paying them if they're not providing the service that they are supposed to? And as a financial advisor, as a plan sponsor, you need to know what you're paying for, and you need to benchmark it regularly. Now, Tom said every year, but the Department of Labor doesn't say that. It says you need to do it regularly. And what do we think regularly is? Every year would be the ideal, but at least every 2 to 3 years, you're going out, you're benchmarking your plan, you're looking at the services that are being provided, and we provide a report to you that you can put in your file. We review it with you, and we're able to have documented processes that you've met your fiduciary obligation with regard to the fees. Now, we all know that there's different types of fiduciaries, right? You have your investment fiduciaries, and then you have your administrative fiduciaries. And we've spent a lot of time as an industry and done a phenomenal job with the investment side of the house, 321, 338. You really don't sell a plan without one of those types of investment fiduciaries. Where we're just starting to pick up speed is on the administrative side. Who's signing off on loans and distributions? And are those loans and distributions being administered the same way, the same time, with the same programs? Are you following your plan document? Are you watching your definition of compensation? And are you administering your plan properly? Are you signing your 5500 and submitting it? Are you passing out all your notices to your participants? These are all the plan sponsor's responsibility. but you're able to outsource some of those services to get some help. And that's what we do.
Great, great. And I think that transitions perfectly to our next question. I mean, I think you all have presented some really great conversation starters with plan sponsors as you guys are making cold calls on the phone. You know, raising some issues from the CARES Act and asking if the plan sponsor has received sufficient information and answers to their questions. Talking about technology and doing a technology assessment of the plan sponsor's current provider and are they well positioned for the next 12 to 18 months. Asking a plan sponsor, can I help you benchmark your plan? Can we look at your 408B2 together to see if your fees are reasonable and if you have fiduciary liability, and bringing in the resources from folks like Sue and Tom and Donna to bear. So I think those are all great conversation starters. Let's take it a level deeper in the time that we have remaining, and let's give the advisors on the phone some specific segments of the market that they can focus on in their prospecting efforts. I'm going to let you lead, Donna, because we have a number of advisors on the call who are doing wealth management, perhaps as their primary focus, and yet they have retirement plan business as a adjunct to that. You made some great remarks about leveraging those relationships, and that's a great place to start, I think.
Thanks, Dawn. Yeah, so we work with a lot of advisors who are primarily focused on the individual high net worth business and sort of what I call bump into plans, right? So they're working with the owner of a small company. It could be a two-person dental practice, a very small law firm, things like that, and where they really feel like they don't have the expertise to really sell plans, okay? But I think that that's leaving really a lot of potential opportunity on the table to generate some additional business and revenue. So we try to tell advisors, and I think everybody on this call would say the same thing, we're all here to provide advice and guidance. You don't need to be an expert in selling plans. You just need to be able to partner with people like us to give you the backup and the expertise that you need. So really what you need to do is identify where there might be an opportunity. And so having said that, you know, we say if you have individual business owners that you're working with, they already trust you, right? So you already have a relationship. So that is a wide open door to say, hey, who's managing your 401k? If you have a 401k already, have you thought about, and I know that, you know, Carlos is going to talk a lot more and Steve touched on it, but do you have a cash balance plan already on top of your 401k? We run into advisors that sometimes we kind of coach about cash balance plans, about cash balance plans, and it is literally the first time that this business owner has heard of it. They said, well, why didn't my accountant tell me? Why didn't my other advisor tell me? You know, so there are opportunities there to leverage your relationships with individual participants. And then the flip side of that is if you pick up a new plan, right, you don't know who might be now in that plan that can turn out to be an individual high net worth client for you. So we really think there's a lot of synergy between finding a balance between the two. And again, not being afraid to ask for help from any of people like us, even if you're not an expert in the actual retirement plan space currently.
Fantastic. Great. We're going to wrap it up and bring Carlos on, but Tom, just real quickly, I mean, you told me you're seeing a lot of opportunities in the $1 to $5 million space where plans are perhaps doubly priced from an all-in cost perspective. We're going to send it around to everybody, but just real quickly, the benchmarking tool on fees that you guys have?
Yeah, so we have a number of different tools to help you out there in the field. We have our plan sponsor benchmark report. Those are the fiduciary benchmark reports, both for the small market and the large market. We have Brightscope if you want to kind of analyze on also looking at a different perspective at plans. We also have what's called advisor compensation benchmarking. So it gives you a series of different ideas on what you're providing to your clients, and then where you fit in amongst the other clients, amongst the other plans and the advisors that are out there. A great little tool. And then the last thing that we have that's really interesting is we have what's called the 2020 Defined Contribution Industry Report. These were put out by Plant Sponsor magazine or plantsponsor.com. We have the rights to it. And it gives you 48 different categories or industries that are out there, like law firms, aerospace, commercial banking, whatever the case may be, where you're focusing in on that client. And it goes through different aspects of the plan design in that space. So if you're focusing on law firms, it talks about plan design features, participation, eligibility, plan investments, fees, and so forth. It's a great little tool. If you're interested in that, our information is going to be emailed out to all of you folks. You can reach out as well. So thank you.
Great. Well, I want to thank the panel. Randall, you want to just wrap it up for us and talk about availability to partner with the folks on the call as we transition to Carlos?
Sorry, I had to go off mute. My apologies. Yeah, just to reiterate what Donna and Tom and others have said, I think that the trend that we've been seeing I work with a variety of different advisors. Some are more 401k focused than others, but the trend that we've been seeing is that more and more advisors are creating this team concept where they're partnering with, and whomever it is, whether it's a record keeping partner, a TPA, maybe some of those advisors are outsourcing the investment piece to an outside 338. So I think the environment we're in and what we're observing is there's a growing trend to creating a team concept. There's some efficiencies that the advisor gain in doing so. And then I think in doing so, I think you kind of move from just someone who's presenting a proposal to someone who's really problem solving for a client, consulting with a client, and bringing in experts to help support whatever the client's goals are. So that'd be just the one observation that we've had, and I've seen that increase specifically in the environment that we're in, where more and more advisors are really looking to streamline the providers that they work with and really develop their own team of specialists. And that's how they're approaching the business.
Thanks, Randall. That's a great summation. And obviously, you've got a great team before you here today. We're going to send you all their contact information. Thank you, Sue, Tom, Randall, Donna, and Guy. And we'll look forward to having you again. We're now going to bring on Mr. Carlos Tariche, who many of you know and think so highly of. He is the Regional Sales Director for the Northeast Territory for Kravitz, Inc., which is known as the Cash Balance Leader. And Carlos, you are the foremost expert on cash balance plans. And that is a key prospecting opportunity for folks today, because as we were saying, there are some winners and losers, as Steve Puckett said. There are industries that are doing well and need to shelter cash. So I'm going to turn it to you. Can you give the advisors on the call an idea of the types of industries, the types of demographic factors that they should be looking for in the cash balance arena, and then talk about ways for them to start the conversation and bring you to the table to help them?
Well, thank you, Dawn, and I appreciate the time. And it's been such a learning experience for all of us involved. You know, you and I spoke about 2 weeks ago, and we shared with you where we were finding some opportunities in the cash balance business. And I thought that we had spoken about 2 or 3 different types of businesses. Well, fast forward the clock, 2 weeks, and we've probably done about 12 cases in the past 2 weeks, and every single case is a learning opportunity. And now we have 12 different industries that we're talking about. And every time we're contacted or we make a sale, we add to that list, and it becomes a learning opportunity for us. There are, as Steve had so eloquently described, there's winners and losers to every type of situation. And there are significant winners during this economic downturn and opportunities to get out there and sell cash balance plans. And really, both for those of you who are in the cash balance business already and are hunting in those types of cases, and the new opportunities for cash balance plans. We've seen what was interesting to us, Dawn, is that typically the healthcare industry is a recession-proof business. And early on, we saw significant opportunities for specifically anesthesiology practices and ambulatory and urgent care centers. And what we found is that as this has dragged out now into almost the second month, that we're not seeing those anesthesiology opportunities anymore because of the lack of elective surgery that in most cases and in most states has now been in place for about 2 months. So while we saw opportunities in anesthesiology early on, we're not seeing as many anymore. We had one of our representatives in the Midwest has had a good bit of luck with individually owned franchises in the UPS and FedEx business, where they're doing tremendous business right now. And he's sold 3 different franchises. They're privately held franchises, and he's gone in there and sold 3 different cash balance plans. The car service and repair industry, believe it or not, typically we don't sell cases to auto repair or auto body shops, and we've sold 2 cases. And through our conversations, we've learned that, with the economy the way it is, people are looking to make do with what they have. And maybe whereas 2 or 3 months ago they would buy a new car, now they're trying to fix their existing car. Individually owned fast food franchises, home renovation business, delivery services that contract with the Amazons of the world, wholesale medical supplies companies, Dawn, have been good types of prospects. And as you're out there, if you're out there hunting for these types of cases and you're using the Judy Diamonds or the Free Arisas of the world, every type of business has an IRS business code. And for instance, the IRS business code for these wholesale medical supplies companies is 339110. So you can go out there and cold call these types of business, and it's as simple as figuring out what the IRS business code is and finding that type of business. Certain types of attorneys, no one likes to talk about this, but divorce attorneys and bankruptcy attorneys are seeing a tremendous uptick in their business. Sole proprietors who are authors, they're doing tremendous business. We did a 1-person cash balance plan just this week with a doctor who's in the infectious disease business and is serving as a consultant to hospitals and to other practices. And he's doing very, very well, and he's generating self-employment income. And we're going to be able to help him offset most of that 1099 income. And really high-end real estate professionals, we've had more and more of those types of clients as people who have had it with what's going on in New York City are looking to move out to the suburbs, into the Connecticut's and Long Island and New Jerseys of the world. And they've shared with me that they've been able to sell, in some cases, substantial real estate properties without having them set foot on those properties. They do a virtual tour, and if the property is priced correctly, they do that. So there are all types of businesses out there. And if we had this conversation a week from now, I'll probably have 6 or 7 more opportunities. So there are opportunities out there. The cash balance plan sale is much different than a 401k plan sale. It's a specialized business, and now it's even more of a specialized business. So it's been a learning experience, and we've been in this business for a long time, and just when you least expect it comes an opportunity that you haven't seen before.
What would be the opening question, Carlos, that an advisor could ask a plan sponsor in one of those industries to indicate whether or not cash balance might be an appropriate solution?
Well, I would say, is there a significant uptick in their revenue projections for 2020? And if that's the case, which is the case for all of these examples, and if they're looking to do more than the 60,000 or so you can do in a 401k plan, that's where cash balance comes into play, where depending on how old you are and how much money you make, we may be able to provide a deferral opportunity of double or triple what you're doing in the 401k plan business.
And what would you need, Carlos, having known you guys and worked with you all for a long time? You run for free illustrations for advisors. What would you need from the advisor to run an illustration to take back to the plan sponsor that would show them, or the owner, exactly what they could defer? What pieces of information would you need?
So at Kravitz, we like to keep it simple, Dawn, as you know. And all we need is a simple census, date of hire, date of birth, compensation. They don't even have to give us the names if they're not ready to do that. Let us know who the owners are, who the targeted group is, and who the staff is. And within 72 hours, we'll run an illustration, which becomes, it's our number one sales tool. Once we have that illustration, that leads to the conversation with the prospect. And it's a feasibility study. Based on the demographics, we'll be able to determine if it's a good idea to go forward and to start the conversation.
And let's bring in the theme. We talked about building a team of experts, as sort of overriding theme throughout. Just speak a little bit, Carlos, how you work with an advisor to help them close the business, particularly perhaps if they're doing wealth as a primary piece of business and this is secondary. Just talk about how you could be a team member with them to help them write cash balance business in those industries that are in need of those additional deferrals.
So we like to say at Kravitz that you don't have to be an actuary in order to sell a cash balance plan. That if you understand the basic concepts and work with somebody who can quarterback that process, that you have a very good chance to be able to sell that cash balance plan. The first step, as we had indicated earlier, is to run that illustration. Once we run that illustration, then we have what's called a debrief call with that advisor, where we'll go through the numbers with that advisor and have the conversation as to whether or not it makes sense to go to the next level. If the plan works and the numbers are attractive, then we'll set up a call with the client or a meeting, and we will accompany that advisor either on a call or a meeting and help them present the concept to their client. And then if the conversation goes well, then the next step is to make adjustments to that plan illustration based on the feedback we get during the meeting, and then to close the case. So we partner with advisors. We have all sorts of marketing materials that we can present. We have education. We have what's called a cash balance coach program, where existing advisors can go out there, and it's a web-based 4-part series where they learn from the basics of plan design to sales and marketing to investments in cash balance plans. It's a full education. And for those advisors who attend this event, Dawn, let me know who's interested and we'll give them a special discounted price.
Fantastic. Great, Carlos. We're going to send your name and contact information out to advisors by way of follow-up to this call. And for the advisors on the call, we are going to be doing these webinars once a month to assist you and others in your practice along this journey of getting back into prospecting for new business. So Carlos, we'd like to have you join us. We're planning on having the next call first Wednesday of June 3rd, same time, same place. We will be posting the video from today on our YouTube channel. We'll give you a link to that. You all will receive CE credit for today's call. And we're looking forward to Carlos bringing the team that's been on the call today to bear to help the advisors get into new situations and hopefully win some business in the cash balance and other arena.
Excellent, Dawn. And if I could just add one last thing, because the timing is really important. In most cash balance plans, after a year of service, the formula typically accrues. And that's right about now. It's about May 15th or so. So those of you who have clients out there, please have conversations with them with regard to the 2020 contribution and whether or not their TPA or advisor has talked to them about what options they have and whether or not it would be appropriate to freeze those plans. They're running out of time, so the next 2 weeks are crucial to have those conversations with regard to the 2020 contribution for the existing cash balance plans.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Carlos. For the advisors, you'll be getting an email from us with all the contacts on today's call. Please feel free to take care of these folks. All they do is work with advisors like you, and their goal is to make you successful. I'd like to thank Steve Puckett and Liam Grubb I'd like to thank our distinguished panel of providers, TPAs, and record keepers. And I'd like to thank you, Carlos, for being so gracious with your time and knowledge. And we look forward to connecting you with folks on the call today. Thank you very
Dawn.
much.
Thank you, Dawn.
Wonderful day, everyone. And we hope to see you again on June 3rd. Look out for that email and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.